You're listening to She's the Business podcast.
Have you ever felt like you're doing all of the right things, but there's some unknown force that seems to be holding you back from the results that you know are so possible for you? And whatever it is, you just cannot seem to figure out what that is. Well, today's episode is going to be a real eye-opener because we're coming at this exact issue that so many of us experience from a completely different angle, because you know what? Sometimes insights come from the strangest places. So we're diving into the ways that we think about our diets and our nutrition that have so many parallels to the way in which we run our business. And I've invited a very special guest to come and talk to us about this, who is an absolute expert in what we'll call the mindset traps around our diet and our nutrition that are exactly the same as the ones that we see so often in business, that are the unknown barriers in our way of getting to where we want to go. So please stay tuned.
Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Osborne, and in my 23 years of business and marketing, I've built many brands to become multi-billion-dollar companies. And just in the last 10 years, I've built 2 online businesses of my own from my dining room table with 2 little babies running around at my feet. I've made it my mission to inspire you to get out of your own way and become the successful business owner who's living the lifestyle you really desire without all the hustle. This is She's the Business podcast, made by women for women. This is your weekly dose of motivation and inspiration.
I cannot wait to introduce to you my very special guest today, who is the lovely Marie Harrison. Now, Marie is a member of my Business Jam program. So yes, I've got to know her quite well over the last year. She's also a dietitian, a nutritionist, has an extensive amount of experience working with people in this space, usually those who have type 2 diabetes. That's her real area of where she loves to get in and help anybody who is struggling with, really how to eat and how to approach their food with type 2 diabetes. Now, the reason why we are sharing this episode together is because we were talking about it on a coaching call recently, and like how interesting it was that there are so many similarities between what we get hung up on about our diets and our nutrition. And this is relevant for all of us, not just people with type 2 diabetes. And it's the same things that we battle with in our business. And we just thought, wow, if we could really get to understand what it is that we in ourselves, we each have different things that we focus on or that we find challenging. But if we could uncover what they are, then imagine that we could do that for our own health and for our business and our business success. So it's a really fantastic episode. We're diving into things that you can absolutely relate to, no matter what your business is, no matter what your current approach is with how you eat. And I'm sure that you're going to find some amazing parallels that you can see between how you're approaching your food that you're eating and really what you're doing for your health versus what you're doing with your business. And I know that I had many moments of like, wow, I could really see it so clearly when I started looking at it through this different lens. So I can't wait to introduce you to Marie. She has a business called Nutrition with Marie, and this is where she really works with people who have type 2 diabetes on becoming confident, becoming in control of what they're eating and being able to live and eat what they want and have the life that they want without all of the judgment, without the restrictions, without all of the stuff that we find so hard. And this is where we're coming at with this episode, because the same thing happens with us in business. You get told you've got to do all of these different things. You've got to be on social media. You've got to post however many times a day, and you've got to do this, you've got to do that. And it is difficult, it's hard, it's overwhelming. And guess what? It's not necessary. And it's the same approach that she takes with nutrition that I tend to take with business, and looking at how we can break free of all of these rules and actually do business our own way and find ultimate success, easier success, because you're leaning into what's right for you. So without further ado, let me stop talking. Let me play this interview for you because I know you're going to love it. And let us know in the comments, get in touch, leave a review. Let us know what you discovered about yourself that's then helped you after you've listened. Okay, talk soon. Okay, and I'm here with Marie Harrison. Thank you, Marie, for joining me on the podcast today. I'm really excited to have this chat with you because I think we've got so many avenues to explore. I won't tell everyone what it's all about just yet, but welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Jess. Thanks for having me.
Yes, no problem. Now, we're going to be looking a lot into the parallels between how we as humans approach thinking around our diet, because of course you're a dietitian, and also how that has a real link to how we look at our business, which I find absolutely fascinating, that there's such a huge link in the way that we look at things. Now, before we dive into all of that and look at what those parallels are, how we can be healthier in how we think about our business as well as how we think about how we eat, could you give us a quick intro into who you are and what you actually do in your business?
Yeah, so I'm Marie and I support adults living with type 2 diabetes who are really wanting to get off the dieting bandwagon and looking for a way that really puts them in the driver's seat and helps them to effectively manage their blood sugars. So I guess in a way it's about finding food freedom, a way of feeling at liberty to choose how to eat. And because particularly I think with people living with type 2 diabetes, a lot of people that I've certainly spoken to feel really lost or even have a sense of a loss of control with their eating. So trying to pare it back and trying to, give them some useful tips and tools, to really undo the confusion and give them clarity on how to eat.
Yes.
So they don't feel guilty.
Yeah.
That's another part of it.
Oh, there's so much in that. And I have a few diabetics in the family, interestingly enough, and some of them suddenly became type 1 diabetic, not right from the beginning, and it's a huge shock, I think, and not having experienced it myself, but seeing just all of this information suddenly thrown at you of how you need to eat and what you can and can't eat. And it is completely life-changing, that experience. And I can imagine just how complicated it is. But how did you get into this particular field? Like, tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, well, funny you say that. Well, you should ask that because, in fact, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in my early teens. Previous to that, I had kind of been thinking about careers in education, in music, in design. I had played around with the idea of health. There was a lot of family members who were working in the healthcare industry. But then, of course, I became much more aware of healthcare providers because I was seeing them all the time.
Yes.
And the idea of doing nutrition, really rang true to me. So at the tender age of 14 or 15, I decided this would be the career path for me, and I stuck with it.
Yeah, well done. So I think, from looking at my brother and what he experienced, the advice that he was given when he was young, actually, when he became old enough to really examine it and think for himself, he sort of said, I don't actually think that is the best thing for me. And he decided to forge a bit of his own path in changing how he was eating and gained so many health benefits from it. Like, he lost a lot of weight, he got fit and healthy. I mean, he was literally doing a lot of things that he was not told to do by the doctors, but he took that on himself to do. And I'm interested with you having that experience of the professional background and your own lived experience of actually navigating this world as a diabetic and all of the advice that you're given. How did you find that balance, and what did you discover was the key to getting to where you wanted to be?
Oh, yeah, that's a podcast in and of itself, I think. Or several. I think I will just say this now. There is always something to be said about lived experience. And we're talking quite specifically about diabetes advocates, the people that work really hard at speaking out and for making change and for progress in diabetes management and development and research, certainly will say there needs to be space to listen to people who are living with these conditions. And I think that personal experience that I have certainly has paved me to really want to listen to other people's experiences as part of supporting them. That's a huge part of what I hope that I am doing when I work with a client. Is to listen to their experience. What has worked, what hasn't worked.
No one size fits all.
Absolutely. Right? And I think that's the thing. There is no one size that fits all. So it is about then having these really open and transparent conversations and working out what's the best fit.
And so I guess that leads me into, when we know there's no one size fits all, this is probably the core frustration in some of the advice that we might be given. And that's certainly what I saw my brother dealing with was, you know, this is the advice. And he was like, this just is not working for me, and got frustrated and decided to find what did work for him himself. But what's the shift that we need to see there? And then what are those, we might call it the mindset traps that we get into when we're being told one thing or you know, trying to be put in a box, but we're not square. We don't fit in the box. We're all different shaped. We've all got our own vibe. Like, how do you help somebody to find the right path for them and shape their diet in the way that works for them? I know that we've been talking about how there's so many parallels here, because I'm just thinking this is exactly how I help people with their business strategy. It's like there is no one size fits all. There's no one way to market a business. There's no one way to do this. It's about finding the right fit for you. Yeah, tell me about, how do you do that for your clients with their diet in particular?
Yeah. So the first part is really listening. What's worked, what hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess as a healthcare professional, what I'm also doing is then weighing it up against evidence. I guess that's one of the things I'm guided to do as a healthcare provider, is to be working with, I guess, an evidence base. The catch sometimes there is that it takes a bit of time for evidence to catch up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So in terms of scientific evidence, if you really want something that holds water in the medical and health field, that translates into practice and translates into something that we give as guidance, often takes anywhere from 10 to 15 years of research.
Yeah.
So people may be, the scientists may be doing some research on new ways of eating or new understandings of nutrition that we didn't understand before. You know, these days it's about the gut microbiome and gut hormones and neurochemistry as well. And that's really cutting edge science. And it's really, really interesting to navigate that space. But to really make good sense of it, to provide guidance on it, is a little while away.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so then we've got these people with lived experience going, but what you're telling me isn't working for me. So I would like to try something else. And I do hold space for curiosity. What's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah, I like that.
Let's try this. What's the worst thing that can happen? And I guess that's the antidote to perfectionism, yeah?
Yes, right. So someone, like, tell me about the struggles that they have when they come to you. What is it that people are battling? Because I'm sure by the time they have become diabetic, they've probably tried lots of things, or that by the time they've come to you, at least, they've probably been down a few paths and thought it's not working.
Yeah, none of these things have worked.
Yeah.
They've worked for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's the thing. Evidence is showing that that's the case, particularly when it comes to restrictive diets, restricting calories, restricting, big significant food amounts or significant food groups. Then, you may get good results for a little while.
Yes.
Up to about 2 years. And then things start to shift again. So, yeah, it goes back to the idea that there probably is no one perfect diet. It's one size fits all. And then people are coming and saying, well, I've tried X, Y, and Z. What is the perfect diet? They're still on this quest for the perfect diet.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so it is then about dismantling that idea of perfection and saying, well, one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
And you are not Bob, you aren't Jane, you aren't Arthur, you're Mary. you have unique needs.
Uh-huh.
You have unique health needs. Your food interests are different. Your access to food might be different. All these things come into play in terms of your capacity to eat. And they are all part of that decision-making process that helps us move forward, finding an approach, an eating approach that's going to be suitable for any one person. And even that, sorry. Yeah.
No, that's okay. No, I was just thinking about the whole perfectionism, because I think that's something that a lot of us struggle with, not just around eating, but we certainly see it in our business as well. We think that there is, if it's not working, what must be the wrong thing, and we need to find something else. So either go on this endless quest, just like you're questing the right diet. What is the right thing to do to, for my marketing, or, it's not working, I must need different technology or what have you, when actually, there is no such thing as perfect, but there is something that's right for you. So it's finding or identifying what it is. How do you describe that to your clients? Like, what are we looking for if we're not looking for perfection?
I think what we're looking for is something that people feel confident doing. They're not struggling with in terms of being confused.
Yeah.
That they feel effective doing. And naturally, from a dietitian's perspective, is also something that supports their health and well-being.
That's really good. So can you give me an example of whether it's something that you've done with a client or maybe even with yourself, where you've found the path that worked for you that maybe wasn't what you originally thought?
There's a lot of conversation at the moment around low-carb diets, moderate. So I've experimented on myself, and N equals 1. The evidence is just me. I'm holding that curious space for myself.
Yes.
And certainly as a person, professional person, when I was single, it worked quite nicely to be on a lower carb diet. And I just want to kind of define this for people, that we don't have really good values on what a low carbohydrate is. There's no agreed consensus. So you read one research paper that says it's 50 grams, another one that might say it's 100 grams.
Yeah.
Another one that says it's 150 grams of carbohydrate or less than that constitutes a low carb diet. So that in itself is a little bit problematic when trying to define it all. So that worked really well for me. And then when I felt pregnant, I thought, this is so much more than about just me. I certainly had to keep myself healthy to support the pregnancy. There are more risks involved in pregnancy with diabetes, but I did want to increase my carbohydrate a little bit. And I managed it well.
Yeah.
Alongside insulin, I managed it well. And after the pregnancy, I thought there's no real need to go so low as I had before. And as it turns out, now that I've got a child who's school age, who is looking for carbohydrate as a way of sustaining energy and needed for growth, it makes sense for us as a family to be including some carbohydrate. I certainly don't want to be modelling this restrictive way of eating in front of her. So I've changed it up for myself, and it's still working.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think, like, without going so deep on all of this, because it could, like you said, this could be multiple podcast episodes. But, I think one of the things is, when we look at something at face value, like you're trying to say, put a number on it, or what's the low carb diet? Is it 50 grams, 100 grams? That's one way of measuring it. But what is that source? Like there's so many different sources of carbohydrates. And surely that is actually the bigger question. Well, are you getting your carbs from a good source, or are you getting them from something that's not so good for you? Because you might get the number, you might be like, well, I'm hitting the numbers, but if the source that you're getting it from is not the right one, then that's probably not helping your health or the outcome, even though it looks like on the surface you're doing the right thing. And that's, I guess, for me, take that parallel into business. How often people are like, but I'm posting on Instagram 5 times a day, so why aren't I getting the results? Like, because it's not about the number of times that you're posting on Instagram. That's not how you get the result. It's actually, what are you posting, and who are you sharing it to, and what for? Like, what is all of the, we're humans, we're not going, wow, well done, person, you've posted 5 times today, and that means that I like you and I want to follow you. Like, no one is thinking that. So why do we put these funny metrics in our brains about this is the numbers that we need to hit, instead of really thinking about it on more of a human level, which, I think you're probably then looking at that with the food of like, well, it's not about the number, it's actually about these other factors that you're probably not thinking about that are behind the scenes.
Yeah, correct. And there's so much more about quality. And
Yes.
and I guess on the one hand, in a way, you're drawing a parallel from what I understand to, I guess, to nutritional quality, but we can also talk about quality of life.
Yes.
And the broader context of eating. The role of food, if it was just about nutrition, we could probably define it quite well. It would be easy to sort of say, well, just eat X, Y, and Z. But the role of food makes eating so much more complicated. There's so much happening there. The role of food is about nourishing the body, but it is also about enjoyment. It's about social connection. It's about the cultural rituals that we have, whether they're family rituals or ethnic ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if we start to try and become perfect, whatever that might be, in our quest for perfection, with, let's say, the nourishing part, we start missing out on some of the other stuff as well.
Yes.
So just trying to see how it all fits together so it works best.
And does that mean that, you're looking at what is the outcome that we're actually trying to get here? Because I can see then when you're looking at those other aspects of, food is part of life, it's social, it's emotional, there's rituals, there's family, there's all the things that make us a human. It's much more than, well, there's a number on the scale that we need to be focused on, or, again, it's like, yes, it's like detachment from the numbers. Let's like forget about the numbers for a minute. But that's really interesting, because often I think with diets, or maybe even with business, people want to see a number. There's a number or a result in mind, and we want it yesterday. We don't want to wait however long. So what are the challenges that you see, or, where do you think people are getting unstuck there in the current approach that they have?
Oh, yeah. So probably dieting culture is one that really encourages us to focus on the numbers on the scale. Yeah. So it's all about weight. But if you think at it from a behaviour science perspective, when it comes to making lifestyle change, I might need to reframe that. Weight change or shifting weight in itself isn't a behaviour.
Okay.
It is an outcome of the behaviours that we engage in.
So tell me more about that.
So, in fact, I encourage people to stop thinking about the scales. That really isn't giving us a full picture of what's going on. It's probably not the most helpful, objective measure of what your progress is. You can measure your progress in terms of your nutritional goals. Are you increasing your vegetables, let's say, or are you having 2 pieces of fruit a day? And they're really easy metrics to measure.
Yeah. So it's changing the metrics, like
changing the metrics
that you're tracking.
Absolutely, to be behaviour-based ones, because that's really the thing that you can change.
Mm-hmm.
The weight may or may not shift as a result of the lifestyle change. So in that sense, we're not entirely control of our weight, but if we look more toward what we can do or the actions we can make, it's more about measuring our progress against those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that must be quite a hard thing to navigate, because I'm guessing that people come to you, they've been to the doctor and they are told you need to lose weight.
Yes.
So, what's the trap, or what do you see that maybe they're commonly doing wrong in that approach? And then how do you shift it away from the weight to something else? What are you focusing on?
I think it often helps to have a conversation about what health in fact means to them, how they define health, and trying to get a sense of their beliefs and understandings of where weight sits in that. And having this conversation, well, weight is actually an outcome of our efforts, not directly our behaviours. And in fact, there's a lot more to say about lining health if we start looking at BMI charts and that kind of thing. Again, another podcast on its own.
Another little rabbit hole there.
It's weight isn't particularly a measure of health. Again, particularly if we're talking about people with diabetes, blood sugars might be another way to monitor health. Blood pressure, blood cholesterol levels. We can use those as ways of health status or changing someone's health and well-being. And then there's the doing ones. I've got more energy, the quality of life type measures. I can run around with my kids. I can look after the grandchildren.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so true. Because you think often, I guess, especially with those restrictive diets, they can just leave you so tired, so cranky, because it's all a scarcity of like not eating enough and trying to lose weight by limiting what you're having. Whereas, maybe you can still lose weight. That might be, like you say, one of the outcomes that you have, but actually from a health-based approach, you're probably going to see some other results happening as well, and potentially much more significant ones for you in that how you're feeling and your, even your mental health. Because I know that there's parallel, I've read about it, and it's probably one of those things that's like 10 to 15 years away, but all the parallels of, what you're eating and then, your state of mind and how that can have an impact.
Absolutely. And we know that there are brain changes when people reduce their calories, and that can have significant impacts on mental health and well-being. For some people, it's a very, very big red flag down the eating disorder road, and I've seen that happen. Yeah, the struggle is real and probably more common than you would even really expect. So one of the things that we recognise is that when we start to restrict our eating, a lot of times our hunger hormones kick in to the point that we don't even have control over our eating. So that's when some of that unwanted binge eating or those feelings of loss of control can really come into play. And to really get some sense of managing that, the idea is to, in fact, nourish yourself as opposed to restricting oneself.
Yeah.
And it feels counterintuitive because the diet culture is so strong and so real.
Yes.
The messaging is out there. And I think particularly for people with type 2 diabetes, the messaging is still out there. Let's get you losing weight because that will produce a healthy outcome for you in terms of your diabetes. But there's this funny little bit in the middle that's the unknown, where people then, as they're attempting the weight loss, might go into this other disordered eating territory that actually makes diabetes management a lot harder.
Fascinating. I think there's so much that we could talk about with this. I guess if I could sort of pull together a few of the threads that we've had today, and we're really looking at, it's much more about the way you're looking at or thinking about how you're eating that leads to success. So what would you say would be, three things that you could focus on to switch from how you're thinking right now to a more healthier way to think, that would see you actually have more success with your diet?
Talk about putting me on the spot. Yeah, I guess there are so many ideas where to start. Well, the idea there is no perfect diet is certainly one. The trap of perfectionistic thinking is really problematic. And I think the one thing that also happens, I don't want to dwell on this for too long because we've already talked about it in terms of perfectionism, but we have a tendency to go, oh, this didn't work, so somehow I'm bad.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we start talking ourselves down, and that self-deprecation is really harmful.
Yes.
And that can put people in a really, really, really dark place in terms of mental health. Yeah.
Amazing, yes.
So if we can get away from the perfectionistic thinking and say our needs change, my diet doesn't need to, and when I say diet, it's about my eating approach. My eating approach doesn't need to look like someone else's.
Yes.
It's unique.
And it's not a failure if you haven't gone 100% one day, like maybe it's like that all or something, it doesn't have to be all, it can actually be something. And
absolutely. And when I work with clients on reducing some of their unwanted eating behaviour, and they're almost like I want to cut it out now. I say, well, that may or may not happen. Let's think about some possible goals and strategies that may help reduce it in the first instance.
Yeah.
So it's more about working toward a final goal or a longer term destination. And in that, then we're really looking at imperfect action is better than no action at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that because it's sort of changing from that instant shock, like quick change and have it now, to actual lasting change. So when you phase something out instead, it actually probably becomes easier to maintain that because it's not a shock to your body or system. You've been able to do that.
Absolutely. And there's a lot to be said about changing behaviours in such a way that they become habits. And this is about celebrating those small wins.
I love that you said
recognising the progress that you do make. Again, it's so easy to get down on ourselves and be really self-deprecating and look at, this went wrong, this doesn't go well. What about affirming ourselves? What about the times that it does go right? Whether it's in the eating sense or in the food, in the sense.
It's so true, because I think, we would tend to focus on that one thing, like, I ate that chocolate today, or we're focusing on that one thing that we did that maybe wasn't what we wanted to do, or that we think we're again telling ourselves is bad and that we shouldn't. But then we've forgotten that the other 99.9% of the day was actually really good. It's just that, we've turned that focus onto the one negative or the one thing that maybe wasn't perfect and forgotten about, well, hey, actually, I've got 10 wins that I could celebrate today because I did this and I did this and I did that, and all of the good things that you did, and celebrating, like you say, the small wins and not just thinking I've got to hit some huge milestone before I celebrate. That's something that's so in line with, I guess, what we talk about in Business Jam and in the program is let's celebrate something great that we've done. It doesn't need to be something that's earth-shattering, but if we're doing that, then you're teaching yourself that this is good, and we will continue to, we're focusing more on the good that we want to repeat and not on the negative that we don't want to repeat.
Absolutely. And that repetition, that consistency builds a habit. And a habit is really more of a behaviour that we don't even have to think about. And ultimately, that's probably where we want to get to, isn't it? Building in these supportive habits that don't have us in our head all the time.
Yes.
Rethinking everything.
So would you say, is it similar to when we're looking at our business where you want to create a bit of an action plan and have that goal and sort of, I guess, be moderating how you're thinking about it, that it's not happening necessarily tomorrow and it might take a while to see the change happen. But if you stick to your plan and your goal, then every step is actually getting you there.
Absolutely. It is about action. It is about action with a strategy. And there might be a few strategies alongside the action, depending on what the goal might be. But we look to try and make them realistic and achievable, because as soon as they become too big for us, then the overwhelm is really, really huge.
Yeah. And that's probably where you fall back into that pattern of like, this didn't work, I need something else. And you're just going to keep flopping your whole life, finding the thing. Whereas I love that approach. We do just need to sometimes pause and take a breath and be like, it's okay, because we're not doing this for today or this week. This is actually your life, or this is your business, and you're in it for the long term. So let's take action that's healthy, that's leading you in the right path, and stop kind of trying to jump off and think that there might be a speed train that's going past that we're missing out on. It's like, that doesn't exist, guys. You're on it. As long as you stay on it and stop diverting, then you'll get there. Yeah, it's amazing. Do you have any final little nugget of gold, a takeaway point that someone who is listening might think, something to take away that they would go, if I can remember this one thing, then that will help?
I think, we're unique. And it is not a one size fits all. We come with our own stories, our own backgrounds, and they have paved some of the way for us. Some of them may have been negative even, and so we need to be mindful of how they may have impacted us in how we currently, manage, or we think about our eating, and we think about ourselves with our eating.
Yes.
And I guess that's the same with business. I've noticed that we all come with our backstories. It's important to recognise the good and the bad, what's working and what's not, and sometimes it might help to connect with someone who can help navigate you through some of the strategies and the ideas, to move that next step, or to take some more action. If you're finding that you're really feeling lost in what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah, I like to say, your blind spots are called a blind spot for a reason. It's because you can't see them. They're right in front of you, but they are your blind spots. So, I think that's so true, that when you're just in that place and you're feeling scattered, you're feeling unsure, then it's probably because you're not seeing what's right in front of you, because it's in your blind spot, and having somebody else be able to help you remove that barrier. Powerful, isn't it? Definitely can shift you to where you need to be. That's amazing. Thank you, Marie. If people would like to connect with you and learn a bit more, maybe they are diabetic, or they know someone who is and who's really struggling with their eating and just wants something that's more life aligned to their life and what would work for them, then how could they best find you?
My website, Nutrition with Marie, spelled MARI.com. I also have the same handle on Facebook, so my Facebook page at Nutrition with Marie.
Nutrition with Marie, amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'll hook those up in the show notes as well. So if you're listening, you can dive in there and you can find Marie over on her page or on her website. And obviously reach out to her with questions or anything that you would like to discuss, because she's there to help. So thank you so much, Marie. Thank you. I appreciate your time today, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jess. Lovely to share with you.
You've been battling with your niche for many years, and you know that you could define it better. You're just not sure how, and you keep on getting stuck on how you can be more specific and how you can really find that place that is the right spot for you. How to choose, the right niche for yourself. Absolutely. Really good question. Well, then I invite you to look at my short course. It's called Know Your Niche. In literally over a weekend, you can get that done. You can define your niche, and next week you can be clear about exactly what it is that you're doing in your business, who it is that you're most wanting to attract, how you can speak to them, how you can make sure your service offering is aligned to them, and build your marketing plan to attract them, to connect with them. Now, Know Your Niche is usually a $297 program. If you head to my website right now at jessicaosborne.com/niche and put in code 50, I will take 50% and you can pay 50%. So we can go halves in the Know Your Niche program as my gift for you for listening to my podcast. Thank you for listening in. And you can get started with your niche definition, really break through some of those barriers and get clear on what it is that you want to be doing, what you want to be known for, who you're wanting to work with, so that you can be more clear, have faster growth, and stand out above the rest as a credible authority in your space. So head to jessicaosborne.com/niche to get clear on how you know your niche right now.